Welcome to the latest in the series of Confessions of a Business Owner. And this series is all about really helping business owners understand their purpose, their why. And it's really being dialed into purpose and why that makes you, on those darkest days, dial back to why you're in business, why you're doing what you do, and just get you reset for the journey ahead. If you're not getting out of your business that love that you first had on day one, if you're not getting the lifestyle, the financial rewards that you want from your business, it's likely that your purpose isn't dialed in properly. So this webinar series is all about helping you really understand what purpose is about and chatting to guest experts about how they've dialed their purpose in and what purpose means to them. And I'm absolutely delighted this afternoon to welcome Penny Power OBE, who's going to share some pearls of wisdom with us around how she helps the many, many businesses that she serves in her community. So Penny, good afternoon to you.
Hi, lovely to see you all. It's so nice doing an event like this with you all, actually, rather than just a podcast. It's lovely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Penny, just for all those that are watching us live this afternoon and all those that are dialing in afterwards, what is it that drives you? Because you've been in business for many, many years and you've had your ups and downs that you're going to share with us this afternoon. But what is it that keeps you focused? What is it that drives you every single day to do what you do?
So, thank you. Great question. I think this whole subject of purpose is a really interesting one. I think Simon Sinek, when he did his Start With Why, sent a lot of people into massive chaos because some people are driven by how am I going to feed my family, as well as, trying to find their purpose can actually be quite confronting. And I do think what I like about what you ask when you've asked me this, Gary, is that you include that sort of the purpose behind what is driving you, which can't always be that sort of the Simon Sinek Start With Why, but it can get you out of bed. And I think when I try and wrap up what my sense of purpose has been since I was first joined the business world when I was 19, it's always been about the people. And I guess, without it sounding too soppy, whether or not the people I interact with have more of a sense of happiness from meeting me, and whether or not I've been able to impact them finding their happiness in their future. And so relationships have always been really important to me in business. When I joined the IT sector at 19, I sort of joined in telesales, selling computers. We were a box shifter for Hewlett Packard and Microsoft. We had about 80 million pounds worth of stock. And I worked for various companies, ended up being sales and marketing director of a large UK distributor in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was always the depth of relationship that I had with people that mattered. And in a world where we were working on 2-3% margins, we were always, the shareholders in our business were always quite surprised how our margins were always a bit better and how we did actually manage to create loyalty within our client base in a market that was really very price sensitive. And so, at the time, I wasn't thinking of what's my purpose every day. I just wanted to make sure that the people I worked with and the staff I had and the suppliers and the clients I had enjoyed interacting with me, and that somehow I brought something a bit different than just the product or just the service. But I suppose it was in 98 when I really consolidated that by creating Academy, which was thanks to a lot of the teachings that my husband was giving me around the importance of networking. And when we started Academy, it was the world's first social network for business. Didn't have that term then. The term social networking really didn't start until Facebook and LinkedIn, which were 4 and 6 years after we started, came about. But Thomas and I started Academy because we wanted to help business owners feel less lonely, more connected, help experts raise their profile and become known, build their personal brands. And that sense of purpose started to get really consolidated into how do we help people, individuals who own their own businesses, really grow powerful brands that help them have some sense of control over their life. And that remains our sense of purpose, even though we've had lots of different business vehicles to do it with and through. Actually connecting people and helping them sort of close the gap between their identity and their truth, which is an interesting subject in its own right, has always been what we want people to do. And interestingly, any of the clients that we've have do report back to us a sense of peace about themselves and their business when they start coming into our communities, which is lovely.
Fantastic. So this has been something, your sense of purpose, for many, many years now. Penny, just for the benefit of those tuning in, what was the moment that you said, there's a gap here, we need to create this social network to deliver this offering to these people? Just talk us through that moment when that penny dropped for you. Sorry to use the pun.
I love that, yeah. It was the 7th of February, 98, and we had 3 children under 5. I wasn't working full time. I was working in interim roles for different IT companies that had lost sales directors, and I was doing a bit of helping them through some challenging times. But Thomas was working very much in the e-commerce, e-procurement world. And if you can take yourself back to 1998, so 22 years ago, the internet was really in its growth phase of everybody thinking, just by the fact that they had www on a business card, they felt that they were going to be multimillionaires. It was like having a lottery ticket in their hands. And it was really apparent from talking to Thomas and all this massive network that he had that was going to be explosive. But along with the explosion of the internet, was going to come massive loneliness, really. And I've always been driven by emotional wealth, and always felt and really thought that people who are confident and emotionally happy are more attractive to know. And therefore, if we can help people feel emotionally strong by connecting them, then surely that would be good for their business. So I said to Thomas, we were sitting in a Pizza Express in Farnham, and I said to him, wouldn't it be really nice to have a community where all the people you know and you're meeting could talk to one another, and rather you being the gateway where everything has to go through Thomas, who's the ultimate networker, wouldn't it be amazing if they can connect with one another? And so that was the idea. And it was very much focused on self-employed and small business owners. And when LinkedIn came in 4 years later, Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, was actually on our platform. We knew him very well. And we wanted to help him grow LinkedIn because his plan for LinkedIn was more the corporate sector.
Yeah.
And he was one of our members, and we wanted to help him to become very successful. And likewise, when Facebook started, Facebook was very much in the social world, and we sort of bridged the gap between the social and the business, because our members really use this as a social space to share very openly about their lives, their marriage, their children, their parents, anything. People could create a blog on Ecademy, and they could tag it either a social blog or a business blog. And what we saw was people would get far more interaction on their social blog than they did on their business blog.
Yeah.
And and so that was the idea, and it grew across 5,000. It grew across 52 countries. We had 5,000 offline events because we always believed in the offline. Members would start a group on Ecademy. We called them clubs. And so they would start it in Dubai or Sydney or New York or Napa Valley or whatever. And then they would start having meetups around those groups. And it was just very driven by that purpose of let's get small businesses like you're doing here, talking to one another, but in a more open way, so that, again, that gap between this is what I do and this is who I am got closed, and they could really create real proper relationships between one another.
Do you know, it's really interesting that, so 22 years ago was just at probably just the very early stages of the crash, wasn't it? There was a recession, wasn't there? And, we're almost in a recession now with everything that's gone over the last 6 or 7 months. And I think, mental health is high on the agenda at the moment. And I don't think there's ever been a lonelier time for many small business owners. So you say it was quite lonely and it needed that community and that club feel 22 years ago. And you fast forward 22 years and we're in exactly the same situation. And that tells me
it is.
there's a constantly evolving need for people who are lonely running a business to get that confidence, to get that network around them.
It is, I think, Gary, absolutely right. And I know, if I was to turn this on its head and say, what are your drivers? I would imagine your drivers to doing things like this are very similar. And what's very interesting, I think, is that we started social networking. It was very much about networking. And then social media came in, the web blog, the law blog, and YouTube, and then Twitter, and then Instagram. What it created, apart from the world of celebrity, which, they have a great time owning their personal brand by being able to talk directly to the mass. What it unfortunately did to the business world is it created fake identities, in the sense of you are who you say you are, your name is there, but the way you display your life isn't necessarily true. And some people take it to the extreme. I mean, I knew someone who was heralded as an amazing guru and started a platform to help people build their businesses. And he hired a posh house for the day. He borrowed a Ferrari for the day, and he bought a suit and took it back the next day and stood outside of it and said, "You can be as rich as me if you follow my plan." So it's become a world where it's really hard when you've got this issue of compare and despair, where people go online and they go, "Oh God, I'm not as beautiful as that person," or "I'm not as clever as that person," or "I'm not as connected as that person." It's hard to really know where the truth is in our world. And I think if you can create a community where people feel safe to say that not all is perfect, I am not the finished product, I am still learning, still having adversity, still having challenges to overcome, I think you create a more powerful marketplace, actually. And we've done this with one we've recently launched called BIP 100, and it's just for 100 experts to join. When you have a safe place of an intimate group of people that are thinking, I'm not being judged for the fact that I'm human, and all humans go through challenges, you create a really good place. And certainly Thomas and I are finding, because in my book, Business Personal, I really, I stand metaphorically naked in front of everyone, sharing our story from giddy heights to complete financial adversity and challenges. We found people feel quite safe coming to us now with their truth. And that in itself can be very liberating, because then people know how to help you.
Yeah.
And people feel safe to then say, I need help as well. And one of the strengths of a business owner is they're very independent. But one of the overdone strengths is when they take that independence too far and they don't ask for help. And that's when life becomes really lonely.
Yeah, it's, there's a phrase I use quite often, and it is comparison is the thief of joy. And if we spend our lives comparing ourselves to everybody else rather than who we were yesterday, then, and particularly with social media, we're just going to finish up imprisoning ourselves in a place that we don't want to be.
Yeah, but you use an interesting, that term by Theodore Roosevelt, which I think is a really appropriate term to use. We compare ourselves with others, but sadly at the moment, a lot of people, and we've been through this, are comparing themselves with their former self.
Yeah.
And saying, well, I used to be so successful, or I used to find life easier, or I used to have a bigger house. And Thomas and I have been through that, where, this is back to what your sense of purpose is very linked to what is driving you. And I now at 56 think, well, in my 20s, I was driven to create my identity, to know where my place was in the world, to create a sense of feeling that my financial future was going to be a path that was going to be predictable if I kept on working as hard as I did. And in your 30s and 40s, you're executing against that, and you probably have huge overheads with, family costs and a lot of pressure. And then people go into their 50s and they still try and hold on to those same drivers. And certainly I know that when I sort of appraised my life 3 years ago and stood back and had the opportunity to write my book, I sort of discovered that my drivers in my 50s are completely different to the drivers that I had in my 20s, 30s and 40s. And what is quite interesting is some people are still driven to build huge companies and have these huge ambitions to appear successful, when actually if they scale back a bit and reevaluate, they can actually often make more money for themselves and have a much better balance in life. So I think it's our purpose. We need to constantly, we can have the overall purpose, which mine has never changed, but what is driving that purpose as well, sometimes we need to reevaluate that.
Absolutely. And Penny, would you say that your change that you've had recently, 3 years ago, you say, is that just as a result of being older and wiser and more experienced, or is that down to things that have happened that have caused you to reevaluate? Because I know from our interactions, you know, it's not always been a bed of roses for you, has it?
No. I mean, Thomas and I, in 2012, when the Academy finally came to an end, having worked unbelievably hard for 14 years, we had 650,000 members that all felt they knew us very well and had an easy gateway to us. They could send us a message, and if we didn't answer in 2 days, they'd be really angry. And, you know, we'd be walking through London and people would say hi to us on a tube and not even introduce themselves. Say, hi, Penny, so nice to see you again. And I think, oh, please just tell me who you are. How am I supposed to recognize and know who you are? And I don't want to look insincere.
Yeah.
It was a very, very hard, but our identity was very linked to that. You know, we were introduced across the world in major cities as the most connected people in the world. And then in 2012, we just could not keep that business going anymore. Members wanted it for free. Like, you don't want to pay for Facebook, you don't want to pay for LinkedIn, but they didn't want to become the products. So they didn't allow us to introduce other business models. We weren't allowed to sell to them in any way because that wasn't the culture. And so suddenly we had a business model that required us to be funding a very expensive platform and nobody wanting to pay. And the business had been built organically based on, you pay £10 a month. We then cross-check that you are who you say you are. It's very safe because we can check that against a credit card. So, you know, there's no fake identities. Therefore, trolling and nastiness was reduced. But people were saying, but you're greedy. LinkedIn is free. Facebook is free. And we were saying, but where's the business model behind that? Where is? So Thomas and I were constantly propping up our business, which left us in £2.5 million worth of personal debt to try and keep a business going and try and get people, you know, a business that was churning. So the loyal members were staying, but as some of them left, the new members would hit the front page and go, well, why should I pay for that when I don't have to pay for LinkedIn and Facebook? So we had emotionally attached ourselves to something that took us into financial ruin. And I think a lot of people do that. And so then in 2012, you know, Thomas and I then were left without this amazing home and our identities had gone. And I think a lot of people will be struggling to hold on to their identity, hold on to a business that is very hard to let go of because their identity is linked to it and their belief around the path of their future finances are linked to it. And it's very, very scary. And it took, you know, Thomas became a non-exec director for a number of companies. I started another business called Digital Youth Academy. And without giving ourselves a breath to shake off the pain, the loss of a business, we were into serving and creating other businesses. And I think it wasn't really, honestly, it took till 2000 and where are we now? 17, 5 years for me to say, hold on, because I just stayed on a conveyor belt of pressure, partly to keep funding our children's lives and get to a point where, you know, everything didn't collapse around us. And then Thomas got bowel cancer. I had to take a step back because we'd had a number of terrible things happen in our family. One of them was my mum had dementia and needed a lot of me. My brother died of pancreatic cancer. My sister lost her daughter. And then our gorgeous daughter, Hannah, who had just gone to work for Accenture and was finally she's our eldest, was finally living a life up in London. She got abducted on a holiday and raped she was abducted by 3 men and raped by one of them. And all of that was while we were trying to maintain the drivers that had driven us and trying to make sure my mum and dad were all right, my brother's family were all right, my sister was okay, my daughter was okay. We were assuming that we could do everything. And it wasn't till 2017, towards the back end of it, I said, actually, do you know what? I'm not really as superhuman as I thought I was. And so I'm just going to have to step off the world a bit and reevaluate what my future is going to be in the business world. And, you know, I then really spent some time looking at, what do I love? What type of people do I love working with? What type of service do I want to give? And one of those was that when you had 650,000 members and had a business that was huge, I never felt I was doing a good job, because I could never connect with all of them in the way that I deeply like to. And so it was a bit like that film, Bruce Almighty, when Bruce says, "Let me be God," and he lies in bed and those Post-it notes come flying in. Do you remember? Or they go into filing cabinets. Every night I could hear the prayers of 650,000 members, but never really fulfill what I feel I could give to them. And I'm not meaning to sound arrogant here, but, you know, I am very passionate about the growth and happiness of a business owner. So when Thomas and I reassessed it, we said, wouldn't it be wonderful just to run masterminds and have 24 clients a year going through 2 masterminds where we're face-to-face and supporting them. And now we've also got this community of 100, and we can get close to 100. And here's the irony. We can actually see more control over that and actually have more income, because we're not servicing a huge engine.
Look, it's an interesting one for me, because you've built up a community of 2/3 people that you were bumping into in the street and not knowing.
Yeah.
But then ultimately didn't want to pay for a service, but wanted to go on to platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook that, quite frankly, there's no censoring of people. You know, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and there is some real dire, poor quality people and content out there. So the irony is, you know, if you fast forward now to people with membership sites and subscription platforms, people would readily pay to be in a platform that doesn't have some of the, you know, that dire around it. So maybe it was just a timing thing for you.
Yeah, it is. It's a timing thing. I mean, when we look at it, Academy, we brought to market 6 years before the market was ready.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing, is a lesson in business is, you know, sometimes if you are someone that sees things, sometimes you just have to wait and be very careful how you manage things while you wait for the market to cut out. Is the hardest thing is to educate a market. And that's what we were having to do. We were teaching people when weblogs came out, we had to teach people what a weblog was, teach them not to sell in a weblog. You know, we had to teach people the etiquette of being online. So, you know, the irony of being first to market is that you, and this is over and over again, so many people say this, you usually are the one that suffer the most when you are first to market with something.
Absolutely.
And people now are ready to pay. People were not ready. But if any of you, I mean, we pay for about, I think we use 80 software as a service things to run our business, tools. But I think we pay for about 30, 35. People, anybody looking at their bank accounts now will know they have some direct debits with a regular payment going out. But we were the first to introduce a subscription model in 1980. Yeah, well, we introduced it in 2000. That was asking people to do something that they had never done before. So the level of trust and overcoming the financial and emotional barriers to doing that with a company, we had to help people through that. Now, people are knowing, just like you say, Gary, if I don't pay for something, there is no way I can expect to get the same experience and the depth of experience.
So Penny, you know, you talk there, you've pursued on that journey to the point where you're £2.5 million in debt. I mean, that would frighten the life out of many, many people. And then you've got all of these family issues, tragedies, you know, some very, very close to you. You know, some people are going to go, do you know what? I can't sustain that level of debt. I can't run a business and have my mind in the right place when I've got all of that going on in family life. How do you manage to navigate your way through such muddy waters and still come out with a smile on your face and clarity on your next steps? I
am, and Thomas is, we are resilient. we're also deeply in love, and that helps. I think my gratitude every morning is for that, because I don't think everybody is always fortunate to have that soulmate in life. When I talk about happiness, we can all read things on Instagram and buy books on it, but the interesting thing is that adversity gets you to really deeply look inside your soul. And if you are a survivor, work out where you really get your happiness from. And a lot of people now will be assessing, do I really get my happiness from the flashy car or the big house or the identity of having a particular job title or whatever. I think you have to really deeply look at where you are getting your deep sense of happiness from. I mean, I'm £2.5 million of debt. A lot of it was across, it was about 108 credit cards, which at the time was easy to just keep taking them out. But a lot of people were saying, just go bankrupt. But Thomas's and my integrity is one of our highest values in business. And I could not be interviewed by you now had I just become a bankrupt in order to get rid of that. Thomas and I deeply had to know that we had take personal responsibility for the fact that we had got ourselves into that and navigate our way out of it, which includes, losing your family home, going into rental, and working phenomenally hard to clear that debt. And we cleared that debt 4 years ago. So it took 3 years ago. So it took from 2012 to 2017 to clear that debt. Now, you cannot imagine how hard we had to work to keep our family where they were and keep working. But as a result of it, at 56, and I plan to work well into my 80s, I know that we did that. Therefore, everything that we had to pay for, we paid for. And that's a really important part of your own inner self-esteem and self-worth. In terms of how you navigate family trauma, it's extremely hard. And my way of doing it was to deeply love everyone else who was going through that trauma. I didn't make, it was my father that was losing his wife. It was my sister who lost her daughter. It was Hannah that went through that trauma. It was my brother's wife and children that were losing the spouse. And to me, I just said, I am not the one that needs the first aid. And it then, to my detriment, it caught up on me, but I didn't make it my trauma. And and that helped me navigate through that. It didn't mean that I didn't have to get to a time when I had the space that I had to then do my grieving, and I had to I ended up having some going to a psychologist who I talk about in my book, a brilliant lady called Anna in Farnham, and I had about 12 sessions with her, just working through it. And there is a process of acceptance. I think when you resist stuff, your brain actually doesn't accept things. And there is actually a process of going up a curve of emotion where when you reach the top and you're in that deep sense of pain about it, and when you cry like you haven't cried since you were a child, and you go for at least 2 days after it, that I had to go through that and get to my own point of acceptance about what happened. And then when you do that, there is actually a chemical shift in your brain from being in your short-term memory that is still affecting your resilience, going into your long-term memory, where it's a memory, but it's not affecting you every day, and it's not defining your mood. And I couldn't have done that without going through some therapy, I don't think. But that had to happen once I felt everybody else was okay. So let's get back to current times. There are a lot of people that will be highly geared on their finances, that will be looking at their homes and wondering how they're going to cope if they lose that home, they lose that car. But what I would say at those times, and I did a post in LinkedIn on Friday about it, it forces you to deeply connect with you. And I don't, whether that sounds very spiritual, but I have to know, back to sense of purpose, I have to know my time on this earth, which might be quite limited, or it might be a good long spell, that I didn't allow each day to be affected by the things that I was giving up. I have to let it be defined by the things I still have in my life. And and that's what I've been able to achieve. And the things that I still have in my life are actually the things that give me the greatest happiness anyway.
And is this, Penny, you talked at the beginning about these kind of fake people that will hire a house and a suit and a car just to kind of give off this guru image. Have we equally got a situation at the moment where, you know, it's easy for people just to kind of go bankrupt and set up a new business and forget about that past, and then, you know, put out this aura that everything's brilliant and they're successful? You know, is part of the journey for you where, you know, you've repaid that debt and you can sleep easy at night, that you didn't take the easy option, that you've been through that pain with your family? And does that, I mean, I don't like using the word authentic as such, but yeah, I think you talk about giving yourself permission to lead the life you want. You can only do that, I think, if you've been true to yourself and your values.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Gary. I think the first person you have to be able to live with is yourself. And, you know, it's quite weird how, you know, when I wrote my book, I thought, and it really was a point in my business career from the age of 19, I was 53 when I wrote it, where I thought maybe I'm going to discover that I should never have been a businesswoman. And actually at 19, I didn't want to be. I wanted to go into the caring professions. And I tried to be a physiotherapist and academically had failed. And then I was actually about to go to university to do a degree in psychology when I joined this IT company during that gap year and never left. And I actually thought this might be a defining year for me, where I decide that I should never have been a businesswoman, because people would read this and I thought that maybe the business world would turn its back on me because of my truthfulness, would probably think, well, there's nothing that woman could teach us. Look at her challenges and look at what she's had to learn about her own vulnerabilities and her own character and personality in order to be able to hold her head up in business. But the interestingly is we're all screaming for truth now. And what happened when it was published, January 19, was I got a barrage of people saying, I resonate with you. I'm going through similar things. I need this help. I have a mask on me all the time. I have imposter syndrome, all these things. And they wanted to come into a place where they could feel that permission. So, you know, I'm not asking everybody to suddenly declare their truth online, because there's a very fine line between looking like a victim of life and that, you know, things are so hard, and looking like someone who's courageous. And so I'm not saying to anybody, suddenly associate your personal brand with your failings or your challenges. What I'm saying is it starts inside you. And it's about being able to live with yourself and spend time with yourself, thinking about really, who am I and who do I want the world to know? And one of the greatest compliments I was ever given was when my kids were a bit older and they came and saw me do a speech. And they said, Mum, you're the same on stage as you are when you're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right. And that was one of the greatest compliments I could be given, because I want you to feel, if you're talking to me now, that you know me, not some persona of me. You know, I don't want to die a famous person, say, who lived a lie. I couldn't do that.
And you know what, that's really interesting, because of the, you know, it is this word authentic, isn't it? It's about being true to you and getting that personal brand over. Because if you're one person in the kitchen and you're a different person on stage, then which is the real you? And you know, I was talking
to live that life as well.
Yeah, and I was talking to our mutual connection, Peter Liner, earlier today, and you know, he unfortunately can't make it today. But when I got an email off you recently after I'd connected with Thomas, and I thought, do you know what? And I've seen you speak on a number of occasions. I've shared that with you, and I thought, do you know, it would be amazing to get you on this webinar. So I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to ping you an email and ask the question. And I didn't think for a million years you'd say yes. And you did. But there's a couple of other people that are, let's say, well recognised that I've reached out to say, I'd love an opportunity to chat to you. And you don't even get the courtesy of a response.
Oh,
Whereas from you, I get, it's almost like you're my next door neighbour. There's no airs and graces. You're just humble and you're honest and you're you. And I think that comes across massively.
well, that's very kind of you. Very, very kind of you to say that. And I think it is the only route to real freedom. And it's interesting, why do people become business owners? And ultimately, most of them will say, oh, I wanted to feel free, financially free, maybe, free to have their own strategies and values in their business. But the ultimate freedom really is when you wake up and just say, this is me. And I think if we can't do that, we're not really free. We've got some cage around us, haven't we?
And I think that takes energy away from you. I think there's so many people living a business life that just isn't them.
Yeah.
And they can't possibly be 100% happy.
Yeah.
And I think what I've taken from this, and hopefully those people watching have taken from this, is actually you can be yourself, and people will accept you, and customers will accept you. There's nothing negative in it. But if you live a lie and you live this in this fake world, it's going to catch up with you, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what's so lovely, Gary, is when you are yourself, the clients you attract become friends with you because there's something about you that's truly resonating, and therefore, it's amazing. I've got this business health check that we could maybe share it that people can take, and it asks 42 questions, very quick yes no things, and it puts into 7 different categories of how you're doing on those. And one of the questions is, do you work with anyone that you don't particularly like, client, supplier, etc.? And it's incredible how many people say yes. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And actually, if you dig into that and think, well, why is that happening? Why? And if you own your own business, surely one of the greatest prerogatives is that your clients are people that you like, and therefore, if you like them, you become deeply committed to their success, deeply committed to their success and happiness, if you like them.
I always say the acid test of a good member of your team, one that you love, that you trust, that's value aligned, and the same from a customer. Would you invite them to your family barbecue and introduce them to your friends and family? Yeah. And if the answer is no, you've got to ask yourself why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the number of times that when I'm dealing with a client and the client will ring, one of their clients will ring them, and they look at the phone and they wince and go, oh God, I don't want to talk to them. And you've got a choice. You can change it.
You can change it. And it does start with, when you're resonating truly with your words and your tone, and you will bring towards you lovely people. And I do want to say this, Gary, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me to come on your show, but also because what a gift for somebody like me and all those people madly that said no or didn't react, to be given an opportunity to have a channel to talk to more people and get to know more people. So I really appreciate it. I'd never have known Scott and John and Ian and Andy and Neil and Paul without this. So,
and that's what it's about. And a bit like you said, that's my purpose early on. If the whole reason I set my business up was just to give as many business owners as possible the tools to make better decisions and have a better business and a better life. So we're very aligned in that. And if I can just help half a dozen people this afternoon, just make, be better informed, make slightly different choices, then, that's a massive tick in the box for me. And you've really helped me do that.
Oh, well, that's very kind.
Fantastic.
If I can just apologize about next week, I don't know whether anybody knew, but I was in a state of flux because we were going to a vet to have our dog put down. And but anyway, we ended up saving her in the end with the second opinion. So I'm sorry if there was anybody here that I let down last week, by the way.
Well, we're all here. So thank you. So Penny, I feel like I could talk to you all day actually, but unfortunately we don't have that amount of time. But if I can just open it up to everybody, has anybody got any questions for Penny, please?
I think it's probably not been a real sort of session that creates a Q&A.
Anybody got any questions all around some of the challenges that Penny's faced, how she's overcome them, the challenges you've got in your own business?
It's just nice to hear the message of, and it's something that I've heard quite a few times, of just be authentic and not be somebody at home and different when you're up on a stage or if you're at work, and that's good to hear again from somebody like yourself. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's nice of you, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not exactly a new message, is it? It's a lot of people are saying it.
No, but it's reassuring to hear it again.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Any other questions while we've still got Penny on?
Not a question really. I'll ditto Scott really there. It just, it's great that you organise this, Gary. Great that you get people like Penny on these things. It just makes you, we just sort of it realigns me. I believe I sort of wear my heart on my sleeve with what I do. Definitely the last 6-7 months, more than ever, you sort of think about, customers I have lost in that time. And it's like you think about, who do you want back? who you do or you don't want back. So it's good to think about that.
No, absolutely.
It's very interesting when you work on your personal brand. And I don't know whether you've seen Hannah Powers, my daughter, who went through her trauma, and she left Accenture and she started her own business, and she's doing very well. And she's helping people, she says, create a movement with their message and build their personal brand, because it's very important to her. We did a TEDx together about, does adversity help you actually find true happiness? And one of the really important steps early on in creating a personal brand is to define your niche. And a lot of people define their niche by maybe a customer type or job title, whatever, but they forget to define it by the character of the person that they want and their personality type. And as soon as you do that and you start speaking on your messages, in your posts, in your blogs, to the person about their character, how much you enjoy working with particular people, then you resonate with the sort of people that you want to come towards you. So, it could be, I love working with people who are technically competent and know how to use WhatsApp as well, or whatever. Yeah. When you actually work out what is the perfect client down to character and their own existing skills, you then bring towards people who go, that's me. I want to have help with that guy because he gets me.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Well, I think it's really, really important. We've got a choice, haven't we, of who we work with, why we work with them, because I think if you're working with the right people, and there's a two-way street in Resonation, that they're going to work with you for as long as you can deliver value.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're taking clients on for the wrong reason or hanging on to them for the wrong reason, it's got a shelf life and it damages you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Penny, just for all those watching live or on replay, I've got two questions actually. Where's the best place that people can contact you so I can let them know tomorrow?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and obviously and Twitter and everything, but my email address is penny@pennypower.co.uk.
Okay, fantastic.
If they would like to take the health check, which is actually it's a 19-page report, but it's quite easily digestible. You will go into my email, so just be aware of that. So you might want to subscribe, but it means that it triggers 12 emails, which are all to do with, trying to clarify certain things within that health check. But that's on my website, pennypower.co.uk, and you'll see a little pink button at the top.
Fantastic. Well, I'll find that link and I'll stick that into the email tomorrow. And Penny, just where can people buy this book? Where's the best place to buy the book?
Oh, well, I said it on my website, but actually I think Amazon's probably cheaper.
Right.
It's also available on audio and Kindle. So, and I went into a studio and recorded it all myself. So if people prefer that while they're walking their dog or whatever.
Fantastic. Penny, it's been an absolute pleasure this afternoon. Thanks for sharing your valuable time and some great insight for us all. It's really been a pleasure. Very inspirational, as Andy said there.
Well,
so just hope everybody enjoyed today's Confessions of a Business Owner webinar, and you now have a little bit more clarity on your purpose, your why, and what should be driving you to do what you do every single day. The next webinar we've got lined up in 2 or 3 weeks' time, more details to follow. So look out in your inbox for a recording of today's webinar and details of the next webinar. Thanks again, Penny, and everybody else for joining us. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.